Live from PATV Studios, it's the Lyle Style Show. And now, the man with the most style, it's your host, Lyle Style.
Well, hey, welcome to a wonderful edition of the Lyle Style Show again. We have a wonderful guest, a half hour with a wonderful guest. But I want to first to say that in our future shows, I'm gonna start a new segment called Red Box Review, where I'm actually going to be viewing the big DVDs that come out of Redbox, so y'all can find out what's really out there and what y'all can really look at. Because I love to watch movies. I love to watch movies, and I'm into watching. So a Redbox Review is coming up in the future, and also we're having Lyle's Mailbox coming up, where I'm going to be reading letters from people like yourself that write into the show and ask me questions, you know. So those are coming in the future. And the Dr. Pet segment is coming right back on too. We love to have Dr. Pet segment because we actually have adopted over 10 dog animals on since it's been airing. So, but we want to get down to what's going on. We have a wonderful guest. His name is Zimmerman, and he's running for county attorney. He's a wonderful man. He's an up-and-coming star out here in Johnson County. So I want to invite you to the show. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here.
To the show, Zim. Can I call you Zim?
You can call me Zim if you want to.
Zim?
John.
Oh,
Zim.
John. Oh, okay. We're looking over towards that. Okay, good. we got a lot of people just looking at you, man. But what I want to say now, I want to get down because I'm a little nervous because politicians always scare me, man. But this is your first time running, and so I guess got a quick background. I want to ask you some questions, whatever. But first of all, I want to say now where are you from, and a little bit about your background and experience.
Mm-hmm. So before coming up to law school a few years ago, I was a Mennonite pastor down in Mount Pleasant, so just an hour south of here.
Okay.
And I did that for 7 years. I actually grew up in Seattle, Washington, and then have lived a few different places in between.
Oh, okay. So you grew up in Seattle, Washington, huh? So you're from the West Coast.
I'm from the West Coast, yeah, and Seattle got cool right after I left. I graduated from high school in '86.
Okay.
And so when I went to school there was no distinctive Seattle music or Seattle coffee, and then I left, and everything became very fashionable.
Oh yeah, right. Because they get Starbucks
and grunge music, and the tech boom happened. But when I was there, it was more of a blue collar town, really.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Now, Now, what about your experience?
So my before coming to law school, again, I was a Mennonite pastor, and in that role, I connected to a lot of folks who were more on the edge of society and were more marginalized, and saw a lot of people have really bad outcomes in the criminal justice system. It seemed mostly because they were poor.
Yes.
And I was very frustrated with that, angry about it, visited a lot of people in jail and prison and advocated for a lot of folks, and decided that rather than just agreeing with them that the system was unjust, that it was time for me to do something about it. And so I came up here to school. And in the law school this past year.
University Law School?
Yeah, to University of Iowa Law School.
Okay.
And so in my last year in law school, I spent a lot of time working in the law school's clinic, both on criminal defense cases and also in the domestic violence clinic, helping women get protective orders.
Oh, wow. That's a wonderful cause, man. We definitely need to get that. Yeah, so you've been doing that for a while, for a few years, and while you were in school and learning the system and stuff, huh? Oh, wow. It's okay. Now, let's see. Now, what are some of the points that you have on, or that you're running for like your platform, or what do you?
Well, so what I've seen is that the Johnson County criminal justice system tends to be over-aggressive on a lot of petty things, without putting resources adequately into a few things that actually should be prosecuted more aggressively. And so many people here get pulled into the system for things like that they're not hurting anybody, for things like marijuana possession, for public intoxication when they're not doing anything other than just having had a lot to drink, and a lot of race-based stuff that gets pulled into the system. And so those folks end up being criminally prosecuted. The policy now seems to be to prosecute everything the police bring in. And so whatever a police officer decides to do, whoever they decide to search, that's the person who ends up going through the whole thing. What I am running to do is to use the county attorney's office to screen cases, which is really part of its purpose.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so all the standards for prosecutors that are published always start by saying that the first duty of the prosecutor is to do justice.
Right.
And that there are lots of reasons not to prosecute cases, including things like if the punishment seems disproportionate to the offense, or if it's a bad use of resources, or if this kind of charge is not usually the sort of thing that's prosecuted. And so part of my commitment is to end prosecution of the really petty stuff that clogs up the system.
Petty stuff?
Like people who get charged for possession of marijuana for personal use and paraphernalia. It ends up giving a lot of people criminal records. And the reality is that in Johnson County, probably, if you arrested everybody guilty of possession of marijuana or paraphernalia right now, it would be like 20,000 people, which would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So the only people that get arrested are those who the police search. And Johnson County has some of the worst statistics in the country as far as racial disparity on marijuana arrests. So you're 8 times more likely if you're black to get arrested for pot in Johnson County, even though statistics show that black and white people smoke at about the same rate.
Oh,
and so all that shows that you're 8 times more likely to be searched if you're black. And with public intoxication too, it's a charge that gives a lot of young people, especially, criminal records. Last I saw, it was 13% of University of Iowa graduates graduate with a criminal record that they pick up in college.
I did not.
Right, that then haunts them for the rest of their life.
Right.
And because we have a bar district right by the university dorms, of course there are going to be people that come down there to drink, and it also allows the police then to use that charge to really to bully people into complying on things that it's their right not to comply with. So every day I hear stories about the misuse of public intox, especially to like just heard a story recently of a young woman, Hispanic woman, who was walking home. She and her boyfriend had been drinking. They're walking home to their apartment. Cop pulled up and asked them, "Where have you been? Where are you going?" And then said, "Let me search your purse." And she said, "No." He said, "Or I can arrest you for public intox. It's your choice." So, she let him search. There was nothing in there, and it really was her right to say no. Right? You don't have to let police search your purse without unless they have probable cause. But with public intox, there are lots of stories about that, about how that's misused. Another one of my commitments is to use the county attorney's office to try to alleviate some of these social class, economic class disparities. So right now in the Johnson County Jail, about 3/4 of the people there are there pre-trial because they can't afford bond. If you have money, you bond out of jail. And then if you're convicted or you plead guilty, you serve your time. But if you're poor and they put bond on you, doesn't matter how well you could do in a trial, you end up being in jail before trial because you can't bond out. And so that's why the jail has so many people.
So it's overcrowded.
It's overcrowded, and it pressures poor people to plead guilty entirely apart from how good a case is that there is against them. Because what happens is after you've been in jail for a little while, the prosecutor comes and says, "So you can plead guilty and get out now, or you can fight this at trial in 3 months." Well, what are people going to do? They have kids, they have families,
they
lives.
Want to get out. Everybody wants
so
to get
people
out.
want to get out, and so they plead guilty entirely apart from how good a case. If you're wealthy, you don't have to make that choice. The state has to prove that you're guilty. And so it's not right that there is a different criminal justice system for people with money. I just saw or heard on the news today that there was a former congressman who just got arrested, and he's charged with crimes that are worth over millions of dollars, and he bonded out for $400,000. So when you have that kind of money,
wow, look at that. That's
right.
So his crime is millions of dollars.
Right, but he bonded out. So unless they can prove him guilty, he's not going to have to be in jail at all.
Right.
Whereas if you're poor and you get busted for, or you get accused, without them proving it yet, accused of, stealing somebody's laptop worth $1,000, you could sit in jail for a month, without them even having to prove it.
Yeah.
So that's not right. And I also want to see resources put more than they are now into mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment.
Mental health, that's is very, very important. I can see a lot of people out there that's homeless have mental health problems, and they just, so we do need some more places or whatever to get these people in for treatment instead of one of the streets or whatever, if they don't want treatment, you can't force nobody. But my opinion, they need to open up more doors far as for different facilities for that, because
it's not as easy as it should be. I mean, I was talking to someone just today who's actually a student in a counseling program at the university, and she was trying to get some mental health treatment for some stuff that she was going through, and it was hard for her to access it. And so, imagine if and she's somebody who knows people and knows resources,
right?
And you'd think that this community would be pretty resource rich and that it wouldn't be that hard, but it can be really hard to get good mental health care treatment, and it's so much better for everybody involved to handle things that way than to put somebody in jail for a month and then put them back on the street, because that doesn't.
Yeah, that doesn't, because they're still the same person.
Right.
They're still gonna go out there and do what they go. Still got mental health problems. That's like a Band-Aid. Wow, that's a good answer. But I mean, your system. I hear what you're saying. Your platform. Now, I mean, for me myself, I know the police department. For me, because where I work at, they are great. Like for me, where I work at, because I work at a convenience store, and they really take care of us. So there are a lot of good ones out there.
Sure.
I always want to stress that there are a lot of good police officers out there that are doing their job, that really care about people and really want to do the right thing. But I see what you're saying. As far as in general, certain things are kind of going haywire a little bit.
Well, so I think part of it is that, to too large an extent, the local government here answers to the business community. And so the business community sees people who are young, people who are poor, and people of color mostly as problems to be managed rather than as full members of the community. And so the police department answers to a large extent, unfortunately, to that mindset, which means that instead of being out there protecting people, how can we protect? How can we serve? It's often looking for reasons to arrest people who are the wrong kind of people, and that's not why we have a police department.
So when you're going to definitely try to help to correct that and make it a little bit more better, make it more even playing field, so to speak. Everybody is going to be treated down equally for it, no matter what. Now there's some that need to be put in jail. That do, heinous crimes, that do, whatever, and those are the ones that we have to target on, not the little petty stuff you're talking about.
Exactly, right. And, one crime.
Like rape,
right. Exactly. So one crime right now that doesn't get prosecuted very aggressively is acquaintance rape, because those are hard cases to make, because usually the perpetrator's defense is consent. And so it's hard.
But she say no.
Right, but he'll say, usually, the guy says, oh no, she consented. Right? And so to prove that kind of case, you actually have to work it. You have to talk to everybody involved. You have to re-interview people, poke holes in the stories of the perpetrator to convince a jury that he's the one who's lying.
So he's trained. Wait, excuse me, but he's so what I'm hearing is like, if he says that she says yes, and she says no, they look towards what he's saying. I mean, because if she say no means no matter what,
absolutely.
Acquaintance or not. If you know the person, y'all could be good friends, whatever. She said, no, I don't want this, then man, you got to stop. I mean, if you continue, then you disrespected that person. You went off here without her consent.
Well, it's a crime, and we wouldn't, right. And so if somebody robs a bank, and they say, no, they gave me the money, we don't just say, oh, he says he got it, you gave it to him. I mean, no, right? And so for rape, I mean, of course, people rarely just confess to crimes. But if we treat rape as seriously as we treat bank robbery, and most people would say murder and rape are the two main reasons we have a criminal justice system, most important.
Yes.
So if we treat rape, including acquaintance rapes, that seriously and investigate them that aggressively, we'll get a lot more convictions. The director of the Rape Victim Advocacy Program, heard her speak a few weeks ago, and her estimation is that there are several thousand rapes a year in Johnson County. A very small percentage of those actually get reported, and even a smaller percentage get prosecuted, partly because a big reason is that victims don't have confidence that if they report it,
that they're going to get some justice.
That they'll get some justice. Instead, they hear, oh, it'll just be hard for you, the defense will come after you, when the way it should be is that when a rape's committed, the person who should be terrified of the criminal justice system is the perpetrator, not the victim. We should have the victim's back.
Yes.
And partly, I think, because resources are just so spread out among so many petty things, we don't focus enough on the most important things.
What would you? How would you help? How would you, correct this? If you was elected, and as the county attorney, you would.
Yeah, so we will put resources much more than they are now into prosecution of sexual assaults, including acquaintance rapes. And when we start getting convictions, that will show victims, survivors of sexual assault, that if they choose to report, we are going to go all out to convict the perpetrator. And I think that will both put potential rapists on notice that they're not going to get away with it.
Yes, yes.
And would let victims know that if they choose to report, that it'll be prosecuted aggressively.
Amen. Wow, that's a good thing, because we definitely need to put an end to that type, because no man or a woman or man need to go through that, rape is right, because I know it happens to men too.
Right.
It's not as often, but it does happen.
Absolutely.
And so,
and it screws up the person's life. I
Yes,
mean,
it
realistically,
does. Oh, yeah.
I mean, unlike most crimes,
yeah.
I mean, worse than most crimes.
Mentally, yeah.
Being raped has lasting psychological
Oh,
consequences.
without a doubt, for the rest of their lives, So they definitely, we need to just put a handle on that. And I appreciate you that you have your plan for it, and that you really want to do something about that. And also another question I want to ask you about. Now what is your stance on illegal marijuana for Iowa and drug offenders?
So, I don't think marijuana should be against the law. I mean, the trend nationally is that way. States like my home state, Washington, and Colorado have legalized.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Washington has
So it's legal.
legalized
You
that.
can just, you can buy and smoke pot in Washington. And there are lots of states that have very lenient medical marijuana laws. So in California, for 20 years, it's been very easy to get a medical card. And these states have not fallen into the ocean. They're just fine. What happens is not that more people smoke, it's that people can buy and use without worrying about criminal consequences.
Okay. Even though it's a federal...
Right, so the federal government, it's still a federal crime.
Right.
But under the Obama administration, at least, their policy is, even though it's a federal crime, if it's okay in the state, they're not going to prosecute it.
Okay.
That's actually changed more recently. For a while, it was more ambiguous. And, I think that the federal government has, the Obama administration, they know the same thing that most other people do, is that, look, it's pretty ridiculous to treat marijuana as a criminal offense when you can get alcohol. And most anybody, who pays attention to crime knows that a lot of crimes are committed because people drink too much alcohol.
Right. Drinking and driving.
Right. But with marijuana, I mean, you don't really get people acting criminally because they're smoking pot. Instead, they just maybe lay around and sleep.
Lazy, huh?
Yeah.
And what they say that if you do marijuana, then that means that you're going to be prone to do more stronger drugs down the line. So I don't know how true that is, but that's just.
I think it's been. I mean, that was the rationale. Part of the rationale in the in the 80s and 90s that marijuana was a gateway drug.
Right.
It seems like it's actually the statistics I've seen show that just as much is the opposite. That people who at one time in their life, used hard drugs some, instead go back to just smoking pot. And look, the last three presidents. I mean, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, all of them smoked pot when they were young, and it was a gateway
college
to
or whatever.
and so they were lucky enough not to get caught. I mean, for any of them, if they had been caught, if they had run across a cop in a bad mood, that would have derailed their lives.
Right.
Instead, they smoked for a while when they were young, and they became presidents of the United States later. I mean, like in this county, the statistics show that about 7.5% of people call themselves pot smokers.
Okay.
Younger people, it's higher percentage, and so I would guess in Johnson County with the university and a lot of young people here, it's more than that. So that means 15, 20,000 people. I don't think anyone would say that smoking pot for these folks is leading them toward harder and more dangerous.
Okay, yeah. So you think they should really kind of legalize marijuana?
I think they should legalize
in the state, huh?
Right, and but in the interim, the question is what to do, because Terry Branstad is the governor.
Right.
It's not going to get legalized anytime soon.
You think he's against it getting?
Oh, yeah.
Or really?
I think we need a Democratic governor before we have a chance at legal marijuana in Iowa. But I'm following the example more of Ken Thompson, who is the new district attorney in Brooklyn, New York. Similar issues, and also with serious racial disparity problems. And part of what he ran on was that he was going to stop prosecuting people for small amounts of marijuana, and he's doing that now.
Is he?
So
is it better for that city that he's doing that? I mean,
Yeah, it takes away. One thing it does is it takes away a reason for police to search so many people. I mean, right now, that's why they're so aggressive here in searching, is because they're trying to make drug arrests, which then brings in federal grant money and other stuff like that. And instead, it puts police more in the position of just protecting people rather than looking for reasons to search people, because if you're arresting for pot, you suspect everybody because so many people so many people smoke it. And so, I mean, the police have pushed back a little bit against it there, and they don't particularly like his policy that even if they arrest for it, he's going to dismiss it, or his prosecutors will. But he's elected. We are a democracy.
Right. And that's so that platform, you looked at that and said, wow, it's working there. So would that work here in this?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would create a better dynamic here in Johnson County, just like in Brooklyn.
Oh wow, that's man, you touched on so many good points about your platform and about what you want to do, and for drug offenses,
So for other drug offenses, I think it's important to make a distinction between use and abuse.
Okay.
For most drugs, not everybody who uses abuses. But for people who have genuine drug problems, often what's going on is an underlying untreated mental health problem. And so people self-medicate. So to get through the day or to get out of the pain that they experience internally, they use harder drugs.
Right.
In those situations, it seems to me, rather than treating them as criminals, the best approach is to channel them into mental health treatments. Because most people probably would prefer not to have to use dangerous drugs to get through the day. But they're often more available than good psychiatric treatment, unfortunately.
Oh wow. So far you being elected, being a county attorney, you would kind of help to try to alleviate that, try to get them more help than incarceration. So
I think that's better for everybody. I mean, for society's sake, it makes it more likely that the person will be in good shape when they get out, rather than just getting right back into the same dynamic.
Right.
And for the person's sake, of course, it's a big difference because they're able to function in society and don't have to have a criminal record. Hopefully, that will make it hard for them to get a job. Those kind of things later. I mean, if somebody gets busted for harder drugs and it's a nonviolent offense, and they can get mental health treatment and start show that they're getting with the program, I think that's what we want, rather than getting criminal convictions.
Okay. Well, now you're not talking about for the hard case of people running around selling drugs or doing the marijuana or meth, that type. I mean, because what do you think about that meth, cocaine, and all those harder type of drugs, or people that's actually selling drugs and that type of stuff?
I think there's a difference. Well, the reality is, in a place like Johnson County, a lot of people have pot. They buy it from somewhere.
Right.
Often they buy it from their friends.
Yes,
college students tend to buy from college students.
Right, exactly.
People at work tend to buy from people they work with, right?
Right.
And so, my inclination would be, not to focus on prosecution of small-time drug dealers. Now, when someone's doing dangerous stuff, I mean, anytime you have a black market, you have people try to enforce their rules through violence.
Right.
And so that's one of the big.
So you would prosecute. Those people, you would prosecute those type of people.
Yeah.
That's doing that. That's causing danger to other people, themselves, and other people.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, what happens right now is that if there's violence in a drug deal, even if you're just buying, say somebody's buying pot, and there's some violence in it, no one will call the police, even the victim, because they're afraid the police will arrest them.
Right.
I think this way, if people aren't getting arrested for small amounts of marijuana, then if there's violence in that kind of situation, they wouldn't be afraid to call the police. I think it'll actually be, just like with alcohol now. It used to be, when alcohol was illegal, there was all kinds of violence related to the sale of alcohol back during Prohibition. But with it legal, Miller and Bush don't shoot it out anymore. They just work through the story. And so the less danger there is of arresting everybody, I think it actually cuts down on the overall violence.
Wow, that's a good point. I can see where you're coming from with that, but man, this is fascinating. Now, another quick question I was thinking about, was writing things down, kind of jotting some notes down everywhere. Now, okay, what are you feeling about you kind of touched a little bit about this too earlier, about your feelings about disparity for minorities incarcerated, and how what you might help to correct correct this if you're elected?
It's a huge problem here, and I
know it's like 3% minorities, 3% black in this country. So I mean, like in this state, something like that, 3%.
Yeah. So Iowa is the worst state in the country as far as disparity and incarceration. In Johnson County, it's something like 5% of the population is black, and over a third of the people in the jail are black. And there are different reasons for that. Some of it has to do with poverty, but some of it has to do with a police department and various police departments in the area that focus disproportionately and suspect every person of color that they see. I mean, most people of color around here, unfortunately, have bad stories about being racially profiled. And so one thing that we'll do if I'm elected is for every case involving a person of color, we'll look at what happened and ask one of the questions we'll ask is it likely that a white person would have ended up arrested in this situation? And if the answer is probably not, dismiss the charges and make note of who the officers are. And I think
if it's yes, then
we prosecute it just like anything else. If anybody, and so people of all races commit crimes.
Right, yeah, because there's some bad ones. There's a bad season in every race you think about, So there's some, and I understand what you're saying too. But there's some that try to use the system. They've done wrong. Try to use the system of lies just to try to get out of stuff. So,
absolutely. So, right. And so, if you rob somebody at gunpoint, doesn't matter. It's not racism if you get arrested, right?
Exactly.
But if you get, if they pull your car over because they wonder what a black person or what a Hispanic person is doing in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And then it's like, all right, so probably nobody ever searches my car. Middle-aged white guys, we don't get searched too much.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Another thing that happens, way too much here is that those cases they don't even end in arrest. It just ends up in a situation where people get harassed. And so, in those kind of situations, I think the county attorney's office should be a place where people can report that, partly because there are so many good cops.
Yeah.
They
are real good cops.
And so if we keep track of the names of the folks who keep showing up on making race-based stops, then we can actually hopefully get some action, because I don't think the police department is going to want their cops showing up on that list. And so I think there'll be some pressure to stop doing that. Hopefully cops themselves won't want to end up on that list. So the stops will be made for good reasons that don't have to do with what the color of the person's skin was.
Okay, I hear you there. But there are good cops out there. Realize they are good cops. So but realize they serve and protect, and I appreciate all of them. Damn, we got 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. You talked about everything. You're running on a great platform, and man, we appreciate it. I appreciate you coming down. Talk to me. I'm still nervous, man. My head is still big, but
one thing I can add is that early voting has started.
Oh, good.
Anybody in the county can vote right over at the county building.
Okay.
During regular business hours on weekdays. In Johnson County, if you're not already registered here, you can register right at the same time you vote.
Okay, good. Definitely. You starting up. People are talking about you everywhere. Really, your name is out there. So coming on my show, I appreciate that. You taking the time of your busy schedule.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And I definitely want you to come back on the show, down the line, because you never know, be reelected. We talk about, how you've been doing. If that happens.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to, you want to give a shout out to somebody, mention somebody, out there, say, because I always shout out to somebody.
Well, I would just thank all my campaign team, because we have a campaign with all volunteers and some really fantastic, energetic people. I want to stop naming names, but this is a totally grassroots campaign, and it's been amazing for me to experience.
Amen. But I have to give a shout out first. I got a shout out to a pizza place, to Babo's Pizza. They watched the Lyle Style show. I said I was going to do it for them. I want to shout out to Brian, Lauren, and Gabe. Thank y'all for being my fan, for watching the show. And I appreciate y'all doing it. And all the people out there that watch my show and talk to me about my show. It's a blessing. We got 30 seconds left. So I want to shout out to my mom. I love you, Mom. Thank you for always being there for me. And also my beautiful girlfriend, who I love and appreciate. She's there for me. Kathy, I love you, and thank you for supporting me. And just I got to wrap it up. So as always, I want everybody to keep styling and profiling. Get out there and vote. and treat someone nice. Peace. I'm out of here.